We're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila chapter 17, Pastimes of the Lord in His Youth. And we have verses 79 through 89. We can chant together verse 89. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Once, while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was performing kirtan, clouds assembled in the sky, and the Lord, by His own will, immediately stopped them from pouring rain. Purport. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that once when Lord Chaitanya was performing Sankirtan a short way from the village, some clouds appeared overhead. By the supreme will of the Lord, the clouds were asked to disperse. I like that, asked to disperse. My dear clouds, could you kindly disperse? And they did. Because of this incident, that place is still known as Meghar Choro. Since the course of the Ganges has now changed, the village of the name Belapukuria, which was formerly situated in a different place called Taranavasa, has now become known as the Meghar Choro. The Madhya Kanda of the Chaitanya Mangal also relates that once, at the end of the day, when evening clouds assembled overhead and thundered threateningly, all the Vaishnavas were very much afraid. But the Lord took His kartals in His hands and personally began chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, looking up toward the sky as if to direct the demigods in the higher planets. Thus, all the assembled clouds dispersed, and as the sky became clear, with the moon rising, the Lord began dancing very happily with His jubilant and satisfied devotees. And so ends Prabhupada's purport to this verse. I can't help but wonder, don't mind, but I can't help but wonder if Lord Chaitanya had been present at the time that Lord Indra decided to trouble the residents of Vrindavan, whether he could have done something different from Krishna. Anyway, I'm going to go back to verse 79 and read up to 89. There are no purports. Akkadina Prabhu Shavabhakta Ganalaya Shankirtana Kori Boise Shama Jukta Haya. One day the Lord performed Sankirtan with all His devotees, and when they were greatly fatigued, they sat down. The Lord then sowed a mango seed in the yard, and immediately the seed fructified into a tree and began to grow. As people looked on, the tree became fully grown with the fruits that fully ripened. Thus everyone was struck with wonder. The Lord immediately picked about 200 fruits, and after washing them, He offered them to Krishna to eat. The fruits were all red and yellow, with no seed inside and no skin outside, and eating one fruit would immediately fill a man's belly. There is a short purport here. In India, a mango is considered best when it is red and yellow. Its seed is very small, its skin is very thin, and it is so palatable that if a person eats one fruit, he will be satisfied. The mango is considered the king of all fruits. I know your mouths are watering now. Seeing the quality of the mangoes, the Lord was greatly satisfied, and thus, after eating first, he fed all the other devotees. The fruits had no skins, no seeds or skins. They were full of nectarian juice and were so sweet that a man would be fully satisfied by eating only one. In this way, fruits grew on the tree every day throughout the 12 months of the year, and the Vaishnavas used to eat them to the Lord's great satisfaction. These are confidential pastimes of the son of Sachi. Other than devotees, no one knows of this incident. Short purport, non-devotees cannot believe this incident, yet the place where the tree grew still exists in Mayapur. It is called Amragata or Amragata. In this way, the Lord performed Sankirtan every day, and at the end of Sankirtan there was a mango eating festival every day for 12 months. Purport. On principle, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would distribute prasad at the end of kirtan performances. Similarly, the members of the Krishna consciousness movement must distribute some prasad to the audience after performing kirtan. So that's an injunction. Again, this chapter is called Pastimes of the Lord in Youth. And there's several pastimes being told. And this is in the context of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returning from Gaya. As we know, there's been a profound change, we might even say a kind of conversion. Lord Chaitanya was converted into a Hare Krishna. Shivatsa Goswami had been worried because prior to this, Shivas Thakur had been worried that this young man shows no interest in devotional service. He was very worried. But he had no need to worry. Later he had another reason to worry, that Mahaprabhu became too much of a devotee. He became so mad in devotion to Lord Krishna that he couldn't be stopped in his devotion. How did this transformation take place? That is a great mystery. But that's another subject. Now he has come back to Navadvip and he has become so absorbed, so ecstatic. We always say ecstatic, but we can say Lord Chaitanya was truly ecstatic. We sometimes say that was ecstatic to anything which is 2 degrees above, just sort of normal, which is nice to think like that, think ecstatically. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was truly and profoundly ecstatic, which means out of himself with joy, overwhelmed with joy. And in that condition, his life changes. All of us may have some story about a transformation of our lives, isn't it? That we met devotees. It's a nice way to strike up a conversation with a devotee you don't know. Prabhu, how did you first meet devotees? How did you become a Hare Krishna? Yes, well, I have a story to tell, right? And invariably they are interesting stories, isn't it? They're fascinating. Each one of us has some story to tell how we got to where we are. And there's another story which is untold and is fortunately not told because it doesn't happen. And that's the story of what would have happened if we had not met the devotees, right? And when we stop and think for a moment, what would have happened to me if, then we have a sigh of relief. So there is this story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu going to Gaya, meeting his guru Ishwarapuri, receiving a mantra which transforms him, so much so that initially he's worried that the mantra is maybe something has gone wrong, but his guru reassures him that you're properly chanting, you're doing fine. After all of this, he's coming back to Navadvip, and he's practically a different person. And in this state, he is inspiring so many people to chant, initially in private. Initially, this is going on all behind closed doors. This was something of a, how shall I say, China preaching program. We do everything behind closed doors there. But after some time, because the interest was expanding, it was also overflowing, it was becoming ecstatic. It was going beyond the doors of Srivas Thakur. Everyone wanted to join in. But that's also another story that's coming, I think, next in this chapter, when the Sankirtan movement becomes a movement. It goes out into the streets. In any case, here we have this apparently somewhat private event. And as it's explained toward the end of this passage, only the devotees knew about this. This is a confidential pastime. Eshab Lila Korishachir Nandana Annaloka Nahi Jane Vina Bhaktagana Shri Radha Gokula Nanda Ki Jai Shri Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman Ki Jai Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Annaloka Nahi Jane Vina Bhaktagana. These are confidential pastimes of the son of Shachi. Other than devotees, no one knows of this incident, which is a bit of a paradox. How is it a paradox? Well, here's Krishnadas Kaviraj. So many years later, he's writing the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Somehow or other, he has heard about this pastime. I looked briefly, maybe I didn't look thoroughly enough, but I didn't find this mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat of Vrindavan Das Thakur, the mango pastime. Perhaps it's in another work. In any case, Krishnadas is writing about this in Vrindavan, and then eventually the Chaitanya Charitamrita will go back to Bengal, and where it will be received very joyfully by the devotees, and they will be reciting it. But it's we have to be aware of the obvious. This is a book. Books can go anywhere, and now we have the books indeed going anywhere and everywhere, and so all kinds of people are reading them. And one might say the assumption that someone is getting this far into the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? We're in Adi Lila chapter 17. If they get this far, assuming, of course, this is not the first book they get, which is quite possible. Books get distributed like that. Dear so-and-so, please take this book. It's a wonderful book about yoga or whatever. And they say, "Oh, thank you, but it's volume 3. Where's volume 1 and 2? Oh, that's all right. You can read anywhere in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is purifying, and you can get the other books later." Right, okay. Anyway, someone may read, we may assume someone is reading up to this point from the beginning. So by this time, they're devotees. Otherwise, how would they survive? Right? They must have gotten that far to get that far. They must themselves. In other words, they must be in a frame of mind which is open to the possibility that something so wonderful as this has happened. What is the wonderful thing that's happened? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken a mango seed, he's put it in the ground, it has immediately sprouted and immediately grown a tree. I mean, just imagine. No video camera was there, apparently. But, it's the sort of thing you would see perhaps in some animation, some cartoon, right? Some sort of animation. You would see a tree grow very quickly. But here it is happening, and not only is a tree growing, but it's growing full of mangoes. And not only are they so many mangoes, but these are mangoes without seed and without skin. Now it's starting to get a little difficult to imagine, isn't it? But Krishnadas Kaviraj has full faith that this is what's happened. Otherwise, he wouldn't report it. So we can take shelter of Krishnadas Kaviraj, that he has said it has happened, so it must have happened. And then he goes on to explain the whole context of this is Sankirtan. The devotees are enjoying chanting and dancing together. And as a result, they feel some tiredness. Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say, chant, dance, and when you feel a little tired, take a little prasad. Right? So the idea was to get a lot of good exercise, chanting and dancing. And then when everyone is, perspiring and collapsing, then, okay, now you take a little prasadam, and then you continue with kirtan. That's the idea. So what about this, what some would call a miracle? This is something which is a discussion that always comes up in relation to religion. I often make the point, recently I was in China, and we were in a yoga center, and someone had prepared a sheet to pass out with the Maha Mantra on it, and with some translation in Chinese of the mantra. And I had not asked them to do that. In fact, I asked them afterward, please, next time, let's do this a little differently. But okay, they passed out this mantra with the translation, and one of the people said, from the translation, I can understand this must be religious. So in China, this is a problem. To speak about religion, one has to be a little careful. So I said, well, let's take the word religion. It comes from a Latin word, which is related to the word yoga. So we're sitting in a yoga studio and talking about yoga. So don't worry, we're doing yoga here. So they were pacified. So the term miracle often comes up in relation to religion. And what is miracle? Miracle is something which seems to be beyond the natural law. Natural versus supernatural, if you like. And so the question comes whether it is the case that something can happen which is outside of the laws of nature. And incidentally related to this is the question about our thinking and therefore our believing. If our thinking is entirely a product of the chemical and indeed the physical, the atomic functions going on in our brain, if that's the case, then what I understand is not necessarily rational, because it's just the random functionings, right? We assume that ultimately these are random functionings going on with the atomic actions and reactions, and therefore what comes out in the form of my understanding need not be at all rational. So there is a problem. There are many problems with positivist understanding, but over and above this, there is the philosophical question of whether it is possible that there is supernatural activity. So if we separate natural and supernatural and take it as a possibility that there can be an imposition, an entering in, a changing of natural activity through a supernatural action, that opens the possibility for there being what we call miracle. Well, that's one way of understanding miracle, but another way is to understand that everything, even natural law, even what seems to be ordinary to us, is actually miraculous. That everything that goes on at every moment is a miracle. And therefore, something which seems out of the ordinary is just one additional level of wonder to be comprehended by us who are normally conditioned to see what is actually wonderful as ordinary. Did that make any sense? That was a little bit contorted. In any case, if indeed, well, let's go back to Bhagavad Gita, where in the second chapter we have the word ascharyavat. You know this word, ascharyavat? Means wonderful. Ascharyavat paschati kaschidenam, ascharyavat vadati tataiva chanya. Ascharyavat china manya shinoti, shutvapyenam vedana chaiva kaschit. Krishna says that when contemplating the soul, people say, ascharyavat, it's wonderful. I can't understand it. They hear about it, they speak about it. Whatever is done about it, no one understands. So it is wonderful. So the Bhagavad Gita begins with the understanding there is something wonderful, that is us, the soul. And go from there. Everything else is wonderful. The fact that we can think, I want to raise my arm, and then we raise the arm, that is wonderful. There is no explanation so far by any neuroscience to this point of how that's happening, how the connection is happening. Anyway, Lord Chaitanya is not worried about this. he's going to make something happen. Why? Because he wants to please his devotees. He sees that they're tired and hungry. And so we get an example with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of caring for devotees, devotee care. Lord Chaitanya is having a good time with his devotees, and he notices, oh, they're hungry, what to do? There's no market nearby. Simple, we just create a tree of mangoes and everything will be fine. And one mango is going to satisfy, just one mango will fill the belly. This incident reminds me of two other episodes, one within our tradition and one from another tradition. From another tradition, we have in the Christian tradition the idea of, in one case, 5,000 and in another case 4,000, depending which part of the New Testament, people who are fed by a miracle. I believe the case is 2 loaves of bread, which then Jesus takes and lifts up to the heaven and breaks. He breaks the bread, and they become thousands of fish. That's what it says. And then they all eat the fish. Raw fish? In any case. That's not our tradition. There's another story which Raghunath Das Goswami tells about planting. And we could say that this is telling of something at one step more miraculous than that of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is the planting of the pearls by Krishna. Mukta Charita. You know this story. We won't go into the detail. The main point of it is that there's something of a competition between Krishna and the gopis, and it has to do with acquisition of pearls. And because the gopis want to not give their pearls to Krishna, he finds a solution, which is to plant pearls. And then planting the pearls, they produce pearl bushes, and then he harvests the pearls. Now, where do pearls normally come from? Yeah, they come from some shellfish, right? Not Krishna's pearls. When Krishna wants to have pearls, he just plants them. Why not? So that is Krishna. And this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he wants to please his devotees and have them satisfied in this way. There are many accounts in Chaitanya Charitamrita of feasting. My theory is that Krishnadas Kaviraj was missing because he was living in Vrindavan from his young days, from when he was perhaps 20 years old or so. He left Bengal and he went to Vrindavan. And so in Vrindavan, the prasadam will be different from in Bengal, right? So in Bengal, the sorts of preparations that are offered, Krishnadas Kaviraj is very eager to describe in detail because he likes to remember them. Sometimes there's detailed lists of what they eat, what prasadam they take. But of course, what are these events where prasadam is distributed? These are events of occasions of devotional exchange amongst the devotees. We share with other devotees. How? Dadati pratigrinati guhyam akhyati prichati bhunkte bojayate chaiva shatvidha priti lakshanam. We exchange loving exchange. Priti, the priti lakshanam, the exchanges of love amongst devotees are sort of categorized in these three sets of two activities, which are all three of them are giving and taking. And the last is bhukte bojayate chaiva. We eat, and bojayate, we cause others to eat. That's what bojayate means. But what are the others? Dadati pratigrinati, to give and to accept gifts. And guhyam akyati prichati, to speak something confidential and to ask in confidence. This is something which is it's one of the core activities of spiritual life. Some weeks, actually months ago, in Mayapur, I led a seminar on the subject of what I call dialogical Vaishnavism, in which we discuss things like interfaith dialogue and such. But I make a point that dialogue is not just for, people out there, and it's not just about, it's not monologue, it's dialogue. To learn to actually communicate with others is an art that we all want to learn. But where we learn this is amongst the Vaishnavas. And the devotees that I was discussing, having this seminar with, toward the end of the 5 days, we discussed, okay, so what are the obstacles to dialogical Vaishnavism? And they said, several of them said, well, a major obstacle is that we are not, even within our communities of Vaishnavas, very competent, very able, very much practicing dialogue. We're not communicating with each other. And the result is that despite all of our outreach, we do lots of outreach, right? We sometimes neglect something of the in-reach, the reaching in, which can be both reaching into ourselves, reflecting what am I doing, where am I going in my spiritual life, but also reaching others among the devotees. And that is bhakti. Guhyam akyati prichati. So how do we practice that? Well, we take a little risk of sharing something about ourselves to another. The risk is whenever you share something, it will be rejected. But unless there's some risk, there's no exchange, there's no love, right? So that we have to take a risk then requires a bit of courage. Where do we get our courage from? Well, we take it from having faith that Krishna is our shelter. So whatever happens, even if my gesture to open to another devotee is rejected, it's okay, because I'm sheltered in Krishna. So, and this being sheltered in Krishna, is the foundation upon which then we can happily exchange with other devotees. When there's exchange with other devotees, what do we have? We have what's called community. When we have community, then when we reach out, others look and they see, nice, there's community. Maybe I could also be part of this community. But if we're reaching out, and there's no sense of community behind, then someone we're reaching out to says, what are you about? Thanks, but no thanks. Nice try, but I will go elsewhere. Because most people, when they look at us, when they consider us as a possible, prospective way of life to join, that's what they're looking toward more than anything else. Philosophy, yes, very nice, but that can be secondary to the culture that we have. Of course, also people are inspired by prasadam, but how much prasadam have we distributed? So much prasadam. How many books we have distributed? Millions of books. We still have a lot more books to distribute. But how many of those books are bringing people to join community? So my humble suggestion is this is something we can reflect on, how we are really generating a sense of community amongst ourselves. It's difficult because we're the Hare Krishna movement, and as the Hare Krishna movement, we're constantly moving. The Swamis, they come and they go, but not just the Swamis. We're shifting around so much. On the other side, it's a wonderful thing. It's something of a miracle. Prabhupada said this is the miracle, actually, that we are, I have created all these devotees. But it's something of a miracle. We can go anywhere. We can meet devotees and we speak the same language. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, Prabhu. That's very nice. But the stirring of the sweet rice, making it thick, that we need to constantly be taking part in, seeing how we can thicken the sweet rice for ourselves. And thus we participate in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's confidential pastimes such as this. And then for us, it's no problem. We can see, yes, Lord Chaitanya, he plants a mango seed and it becomes 200 mangoes and he distributes. Why not? Hare Krishna, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Any comments or questions and thoughts?